Welcome to Huff-In-Stuff podcast, where we have fun discussing board games, card games, and entertainment for the casual gamer. Brought to you by the Southwest Valley Gaming Group. We invite you to visit our website at huff-and-stuffpodcast.webs.com. And here are your hosts, Rob Huffin and Han Tiemens.
It's January 5th, episode 4!
Ladies' Night!
That's right, it's Ladies' Night.
If you hear any noise, it ain't the boys, it's Ladies' Night. Gonna step out Ladies' Night, stepping out Ladies' Night. Gonna step out Ladies' Night, stepping out Ladies' Night.
We are talking tonight about Ladies' Night.
Ladies' Night!
Yeah, basically, this is not just Ladies' Night, but it's about party games. And one of the reasons why I thought that we could do Ladies' Night, or that theme, is because who knows better about party games but the women? As you'll find in a part that talks about the history of board games, women were the ones that were having the dinner parties after the Industrial Revolution. But before I get into all of that, stay tuned. Let's get into our next segment.
Hey guys, now it's time to talk about what we've been playing recently.
Yes, Elise, that's right. We are going to be talking about what you've been playing recently. And I'm just going to jump right in here, Hans.
Go right ahead.
Well, I will tell you that recently I've been playing Pandemic. My wife and I have played it with a friend. It was, like always, it's always fun. One of the things I find with that game is that even though it's a spectacular game, there's a few things that are wrong with it. Number one, it suffers from people playing it too much, and then you get kind of burned out on it. So I think I'm starting to get burned out on that game, because every time I see my brother, that's his favorite game, we got to play it. But one of the things that game suffers from a little bit, just like all cooperative games, is the alpha player. And because my brother owns it, he feels like he's the expert, so I got to back off. And that's one of the things I don't like about it. If everyone is working together, if everyone's working as a team, that's when the game shines. And if any of you have played this game, you will know that the game really shines.
See, Rob, personally, I do not like Pandemic.
Really?
I don't know what it is about it.
What is it about that you think off the cuff? What is one of the things you don't like?
I guess I gotta go back to when I started. I started with Settlers of Catan, and then Pandemic was one of the next games that I actually got. And I actually didn't buy it. I was living with my cousin at the time, and she bought it. She doesn't really know much about board games. She just kind of was at Barnes & Noble and said, oh, this game looks pretty fun. We played it, and we beat it pretty easily. And
really? Pretty easy.
I don't know if maybe we messed up something on the games, because it was pretty early in my career in gaming, and I don't know how detailed we read through the rules, and we played it, and then I saw that you could play it solo, because it's a co-op game. You just take different roles. And I played it again by myself, and I just didn't get sucked into the theme. I didn't find it to be overtly difficult by playing by my... Granted, I was starting to play Pandemic around the time I was playing Arkham Horror, and every time I played Arkham Horror, I got my butt whooped. So to play this Pandemic game and kind of succeed in an easier way than I wanted.
Well, do you think that you weren't playing something right in it, like you were missing something in it or something?
It possibly might be, because as the years had gone by, and I kept hearing people say, "Oh, Pandemic is this great game. It's this great game. It is the forefront of co-op games."
Right.
And it's so well rounded. And I can think, is that the same game that I played? And I've never really taken the time to go back and retry it. It sits on my shelf. I don't do anything with it.
You have it?
I have it.
Really?
My cousin gave it to me, and it just sits on my shelf. I never break it out. I never suggest it to people. But, I mean, maybe it's something I messed up. I might have messed up.
Well, I have heard that 2000, as many people know that are in the industry, one of the expansions that were highly touted was the Pandemic expansion. And the name is escaping me right now, but it has I think it was called In the Lab. I think
there's an In the Lab, there's like an On the Brink.
There's two, I think. There's two.
Yeah.
There's like an In the Brink, and then there's In the Lab. Now, I've heard that the In the Lab, the latest one, is spectacular, because not only does it have some really cool pieces to it, like it's got a vial and it's got a beaker in it and all this kind of thing, like some really interesting components, but it changes it so now it's not just a set collection, because just like Forbidden Island, because it's similar, because it's the same designer, similar to set. You set, collect, What's that?
Z-Man Games, right? They do those.
I
believe
don't know. I don't remember who makes either, and I should know this, by the way, but I do not. It has the same kind of deal where it's like a set collection. You have to give 4 of the same color, and then there's that one thing. You don't wipe it out, but it's sort of cured or something, and then you wipe it out. You eradicate. That's it. That's the word I was trying to look for. But this new one, where one person can start the cure in a lab, and then each other person just puts in things, and so it makes it not easier, but it makes moving around the board and everyone be more involved as a team.
Yeah, I think I heard something about that. The idea that someone can start it in the lab, and I think that makes it a lot more realistic because scientists are working on something here. They discovered a little bit, and if they're working to beat this virus, this pandemic that's going across the world, of course they're going to share. I found this. This is how far my research has taken me. What can you do with it? And I think that intrigues me a little bit more. But it's still, not one of the ones that I'm dying to get out.
Well, maybe if you got together with some buddies and 2 or 3 of them were really jazzed about it, I think you might be more interested. That might be a good time.
This is true.
And that's like a lot of games. I lent you a game Love Letter for your New Year's Eve parties. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Love Letter, it's published by 999 Games, and it came out in 2012. It's a nice, small, quick one, and you lent it to me so I could play with my fiance. I sat her down. I was like, "Hey, this is a quick and easy 2-player game." And at first, you got to learn, and I was learning along with her because I had never played it. And we're learning the cards, seeing what they can do. But there's that twinkle of we might like this game. This game might be pretty good. But when you're playing just one-on-one, you pull that Baron out, and it's like, let's just compare right now. So some of the rounds ended really early.
Right.
So we kept kind of talking and mulling over, like, oh, I wonder how this game might play out with 4 people or 3 people or another person, just a little different. So we ended up breaking it out on New Year's, and the couple that we played with, they really enjoyed it as well. Yeah. And Jessie, my fiance, she started to like it even more and was like, yeah, this is really cool. And I think the thing that helped out was we played it again the next week with the same couple. The girls just kept winning each round. Me and the other guy.
That's always nice to have happen.
We couldn't. We were playing hard. They kept saying, "You're throwing this. I know you're throwing this, Hans. Why are you doing this?" I'm like, "I'm not. You're just playing the right cards.
Right.
Like, nothing." I mean, that's a nice thing about Love Letter. There's a little bit of strategy,
sure.
But for the most part, you are a slave to the card you have. You have to put down what it does. You have to make that decision, then go with what's there.
And I've heard with that game, one of the things that people do not like is they do not like the guessing part, and just kind of takes you completely out of it. Although because it's such a fast and quick game, you don't have that much invested in it, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Because you're playing so many rounds and you're playing the cards so fast that it almost isn't a big deal. And a lot of games where you're building up resources and it's like a civilization type game, yeah, you're going to be really upset if you get bumped out. Because you've built up all this stuff and bam, you're gone. Whereas Love Letter's quick. You don't have as much vested, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, you're going to have the powder in the group who, gets that card and is found out and is guessed by the guard or has to discard for whatever reason. But they're only going to pout for a short time because that round's going to be over and they're going to be back in it and they have a chance.
Right. The one funny thing about that, we played that when I first heard about it. I didn't even own it at the time. Donna had bought it, one of the gals in our group, and she brought it, and my brother was here in town, so we all sat, the 3 of us sat around it, and the sweet spot, I believe, is 3. 4 is great, too, but I think the sweet spot on that is 3, and I don't know what was up with me. I don't know if I took some kind of alien juice and I was mind melding with people, but I was guessing people's cards left and right, and I was knocking people out, and Donna and Chris were just looking at each other like, what is going on? It was the weirdest thing. Again, we had a blast, don't get me wrong, but it was weird. if you get on a roll and start guessing people, it's funny. That's what happens.
Yeah, Jessie, my fiance, I think 3-4 rounds in a row, she kept guessing people were the Baron. And then she looks at me and she's like, now I have to keep guessing because the one time I don't guess it's a Baron, it's going to be a Baron.
Right. And there's definitely laws of averages involved.
Oh, yeah.
Like where you got that little card and it tells what's in the deck. Like there's 3 of this or 2 of that. And then so you can kind of figure out once you see everything is on the board. So people have complained that there's some counting cards going on there. But Again, it's such a light game. It's so fast. It's what's to complain about, really?
Agreed.
I mean, for $14, if you're complaining, I'm sorry, but it's just like I'm sorry. I got a problem. Now, the other one I played, we got together with another couple, Jen and I, and we played Forbidden Desert. Now, this was new to 2013, and I was a bit reluctant to play it because, I mean, I pull out Forbidden Island, and this is its cousin. It's before Forbidden Desert, obviously. For those of you who don't know, it was the first in the series, and Forbidden Desert was the next one. And the mechanics are quite a bit different. I don't know if have you played it yet? Okay, so what basically it is, of course, it's similar in that you've got the tiles, and you're building an airplane to get out of the desert. Similar, that there was that movie called Rise of the Phoenix, I think it's called, where there was Dennis Quaid in it, and it was a much older movie with I can't remember the guy's name, but the actor's name, but Jimmy Stewart. And I believe it was in the cargo ship, and they crashed in the desert. And this was a remake. Similar in this regard. You would crash in the desert, and you have to build your airplane to get out of there. So you had to go through the desert and dig out these parts and put them all together. There was I think there's one or two wells or something, and you had to carry a certain amount of water, and then the sands would rise. So the board looked kind of neat. That's one thing that Forbidden Island does not have, where this one has. It is actually three-dimensional, because if the sands get too high, it actually looks like a desert with the hills. It's really kind of neat, and it was really a beautiful looking game as far as that goes, as far as pieces go. And they had these really interesting shapes. It's a great game. And if you don't have Forbidden Island, I would suggest this one. This one has a little bit more to it, and a little bit more complexity to it, but at the same, it's really hard. I mean, Forbidden Island's kind of hard, but this one's even harder. The experience was so great that we didn't even care that we all lost, because it's a cooperative game. If you get a chance, folks, you should try it.
Yeah, and if you guys didn't hear my head shake, I said no, I have not played it. So I was just sitting back listening to Rob explain that game. It sounds very intriguing. I heard other people talk about it. Forbidden Island was not one that I really seemed interested in, but Forbidden Desert, they talked about, something I heard about that game is there's coordinates to find missing parts of your ship, but those coordinates change.
They change because the sand shifts.
Yeah, and I think that's a crazy cool mechanic.
It sounds kind of weird, and until you see the board, you're probably not going to quite understand. It looks really interesting with the shapes and all that. There was another game that you pulled out the other night that we played.
Yeah, we played Blood Bowl, and this is designed by Jason Little, published by Fantasy Flight Games, and it came out in 2011. And I guess the basic gist of this game is you are taking... It's a twist on the old Blood Bowl game where you took miniatures and you moved around the board. This one, you are a team manager, and you kind of just have these cards. I guess it's a quasi-deck building game, where you are adding superstars and things to your deck, certain skills that your team can do, and you're trying to win these highlights. And when you win highlights, you win fans, or you win stars to add to your deck, or upgrades to make your team better. The end game is to end. If you play with 4 people, there's 5 rounds, and you try to end with the most fans. For me personally, I thought this game was fantastic. The artwork on the cards looked really, really good. I grew up, like I said in an earlier podcast, I played in the Warhammer Fantasy realm. So you got the Skaven, which is an army that I knew from fighting. It has the Orcs, and it has the Chaos, and the Dwarves, and the Humans, and the Wood Elves. I think those are the first 6 teams you get. And each team has kind of different skills. Like the Wood Elves, they pass and they move a lot. The Dwarves are slow, but they tackle and they hold onto the ball. They don't ever drop the ball. The Humans and the Orcs are kind of well-rounded. They can do a little bit of everything. And as you play these highlights, you can add star players that make your deck stronger. And you build a more efficient, machine with that deck. And you're drawing cards each round, and you have a new set of players to try to win these fans and win these upgrades. I thought it was really fun. I know that there were some. With that saying, I know there are some downfalls to the game. I feel, and Rob, I'm sure you can attest to this, that when one team starts getting ahead with fans, it's hard for the other group to catch up.
Yeah, there's a bit of a runaway player problem. With that said, though, I believe that with enough plays, I believe you can get around this. I think that had I known the game we played, I got a team that didn't really know how. I mean, you gave me the basics, and that was cool and all, but I didn't really know all of the other little minor things that can help you, aid you, like get you over that hump of that one. You maybe need that one card to make that extra tackle or something. If I knew, and I didn't quite understand all the cards, because there was cards you would gain that would help boost a tackle or something, and there's other little cards that, all these little things that would supposedly negate some of the tackles, or it's really hard to explain, to be quite honest with you. It's real, because it's a very unique game. I'll totally give you that.
Yeah, it's very unique as well. The tackling mechanism, where if I have more star power, I roll 2 dice and choose. If we have equal, I only roll 1 dice and we get the event. And if I'm trying to tackle someone who has more power than me, then I roll and they choose the result. It's definitely very, very unique. Since the game we played, I played one more time. I switched my team, and I understood better about the upgrades, those booster cards. I understood better about what this team's trying to get done and what their most efficient way of playing is. And I think you nailed the nail on the head, where the more you play it, the better you know. And you kind of have to know which team you play as, and if you play that team well.
Yeah. This is what happens with most games. The better you know it, the better it's going to be.
True.
And I don't necessarily need to win every game that I've ever played. And that goes from sports on to playing personal sports or playing board games, whatever. I just want to be in it. And at no time at that first game I felt like I was ever in it, so I was getting a little bit like, okay, it's frustrating. But again, another couple plays and I'd probably be right in it. And knowing at each team's strength, because the teams are very different. That's the one thing that a lot of folks will like about it, that Mage Wars, each character has really unique, I've never played Mage Wars, but that's what I've heard from fans, is that each character is very unique, and it gives it replayability, because once you get tired of one character, you can switch over. Similar here, where it's got different teams, and they have their own unique abilities, and if you max those abilities, you'll do well.
Yeah, and both games I played were 4 players, and you could play 2 to 4, so a third, just having 3, might throw the balance off a little bit.
Right.
In the game we played, it seemed like I was going against you a lot, because that's just how the highlights...
It just worked out
That's
that
just
way.
how it happened, where we placed our cards.
I mean, really, I think that game, the sweet spot on that would be 2. I really believe
I think it would be... And I got it initially as a 2-player game, because I thought maybe my fiance could get into it. We'd just break it out at home, play a quick game.
It seems like more of a boys' game.
Oh, there's no doubt about
it. Or if you're like really into sports and stuff, I can't see my wife ever wanting to play this game. Not because she hates sports, but she likes the fantasy theme. But there's something about it that I think has a little bit of a niche market, so to speak.
Most definitely, definitely.
Baby, it looks like it's gonna hail. Baby, it looks like it's gonna hail.
And now, it's time for Word of the Day.
And now it's time for Word of the Day. Today's word or phrase is dexterity game. Dexterity games are games that require proficiency in some physical tasks, such as flicking, sliding, or balancing. Some examples: Flower Fall, Ascending Empires, Rampage, and Space Cadets. Rob, what's your knowledge on dexterity games?
Really, I don't have a lot of knowledge. I've seen it played, and I've seen some reviews on these games, but I personally do not play any of them. I just, for whatever reason, they don't interest me. They seem a bit childish, and I know that sounds very sort of negative to say that, but they just, to each his own. They just don't interest me at all. Now, who knows? Maybe there's a great game out there. Like there was one, this Ascending Empires is one I was kind of looking at, but at the end of the day, when I saw how it was, they were flicking things, and it seemed so like you're moving your ship, and it just could bounce off of stuff and it blow up if it hit something else. There was something about it. I just was like, it just seems like a child's play. It was so unexact.
I think childish is a go-to description of these kind of dexterity games when you see people working or playing them. And I think one of the first ones that you think of is like Loopin' Louie. And that was, published by Broadway Games in 1992. And it's basically all of this is this plane going all the way around, spinning around. It's a motorized plane or battery-powered plane. And the player has to flick the plane up so that it avoids hitting his shed. And it is a really popular, on BoardGameGeek.com, it's one of the top children's games.
Yeah, I've heard people talking about it like they'll have it at parties as a startup thing, like it's a filler game, so to speak. And I'd like to try it just because everyone talks about it. Big grown men are over there giggling like a little kid. So I'd like to try it.
Yeah, I think the one that's probably of the dexterity games that's held my attention the most, because it seems like it's a nice spin on the dexterity games, and it's not just dexterity game driven. And that's Space Cadets, and that was designed by the Engelsteins and published by Stronghold Games in 2012. And you guys, probably most people have heard about Space Cadets. Everyone kind of takes a different position within the bridge of a spaceship. Think Star Trek. There's a captain. There's the torpedoes and shields, and you're doing things like you're sorting dominoes, you're completing puzzles, you're flicking discs to see where the missiles go. So it's kind of in that dexterity game genre. However, it's definitely co-op because it's timed and everybody has to get something done within a certain time period. One person's trying to make the best poker hand while someone's trying to arrange something so that all the shields come up or the tracking beam works. And there's a mixture between dexterity and kind of card building and other things like that. Another game that I thought it was pretty cool in the dexterity genre was Rampage, and that was published by Asmodee in 2013.
Oh yeah, that's right. I totally heard about this one.
Yeah, and basically you're these monsters, and your monsters can do like 2 of 4 actions. They can move, which is like flicking discs around. They can demolish something. They can like actually pick up their monster and drop it on a building. They collect the tokens of whatever come out the building. They can toss a vehicle. There's like vehicles on the board that you can flick and at a monster or another building. And here's the craziest one. You can breathe. So you
you can blow.
Yeah, you can blow. You can breathe. You put your like chin as close to your monster you can, and you get to just
as
hard as
funny.
you can, and whatever falls off the board is your points.
That sounds funny.
It seems like a hands-on King of Tokyo.
Well, they had it. I had heard that they had at Gen Con a big model of it. It was about the size of all the pieces were the size of you. Like all these big pieces, and you were the monster, and you ran through, and everyone was like, "Man, if they had that, I would totally buy that." But it sounds kind of fun. As if it was like full size, I would probably want it.
I would just like to watch a bunch of grown adults going,
blowing with all
turning
their
all
might.
red, passing out, trying to get some points.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good one for sure, and I think that one's going to be in the lead for one of the best dexterity games. I think.
And I think the dexterity games, because the innovation is just going to grow. If this is where we're at, where's it going to go? It's maybe a foreign concept for a lot of people. I mean, before that, the biggest dexterity game, maybe charades. You're acting out something. That in its way is, you have to do something with your body. Dexterity games are the same way. You have to be able to do something and succeed at it. And it seems like game designers are getting very creative with it and unlocking many possibilities.
And that's where dexterity games are great. Makes you feel like a kid again.
And now it's time for our main topic.
We are now on to our main topic. Well, really, what we're going to do is we are going to go, instead of Hans and I jumping in here, we are going to go to an interview I had with 2 ladies that are in our gaming group. Ladies Night now. And we had an interview with them, and it was actually quite interesting. This is Future Rob, and I have used my special time-traveling skills to go back in time and tell you that I forgot to include my little history lesson about party games. So let's delve into that before we get into the interview. Party games have been around for quite some time. The problem is that most of the party games that we know throughout history has been primarily for the rich or the ruling classes of whatever society was power at the time or who was in charge. This was when people had more free time, they had more power, they had more money, so they didn't necessarily have to work. What had changed why we are in the spot we are today, is because the Industrial Revolution changed all that. And what happened during the Industrial Revolution was around 1800. I say around, is when more people had more free time due to different machines like the gin for cotton and for farming and production of goods. Primarily, now of course we are primarily talking about the West. I'm not really talking about the East, like China and Japan and India. We're not really talking about that. We are talking primarily in the West. In the West, what changed really our culture and our civilization was this Industrial Revolution. It had far-reaching effects, and one of the effects that it had, or one of the sectors that changed, was people's free time. People had more free time to do more activities or more parties, and some of the things that people would do, they would have parties and they would come up with games. One of these games is charade. It's still, for the most part, survived today, mostly unchanged. So everything that you have heard and played in the past with charades is pretty much how it is today. The other one was Blind Man's Bluff. Now this one can be seen in the film Sleepy Hollow, is where the main actress was blindfolded and she was searching around, feeling people's shoulders. Because of the social mores back in the day, people were not allowed to go beyond a certain point, the feeling part, because obviously social nuances and attitudes of the day would not allow that sort of thing. But they would, the main person who was blindfolded would search around, see if they could guess who each person was by what they were wearing, the thickness or whatever their torso, what have you. The other one that they would play is called Shadows. Now, Shadows is a game where they would put up a bed sheet, and someone in front would put on a disguise on one side, and the other person was sitting on the stool on the other side, and it was backlit, this sheet. So you would see just primarily the outline of that person. And the person would then turn around and try to guess who it was. This was pretty popular back in the time of Jane Austen. And the next one was called Lookabout, where one person is in charge of this hunt, per se, and hides a knick-knack from the house. And everyone's in the other room, comes in, searches for it, and the last one to find it is the loser, and it was a series of eliminations, and they would go through a certain amount of rounds. Understand that these games are not really child's games, because they were already child's games, because children had more free time than adults did. Now, that's not necessarily true before the Industrial Revolution, but children, just like adults, had more free time. But we are primarily talking about adult games. There was another game called Whist, W-H-I-S-T. It was a card game. It was similar to Bridge. Now, again, this isn't necessarily a party game, but the way they played it was like a party game. The other one was called Karnoffel. I don't think I'm pronouncing this right. It was a Karnoffel. That is from Germany, and they had come up with a unique trump suit of cards with a higher priority, and then they are suited in the deck, and they would throw out all the aces, and they would go through, and this was about the time that they started standardizing card decks, because before that, every person had a different amount of cards, and it was usually crafted to whatever that person was playing, or they'd come up with their own types of games for cards. And this came out of the Middle Ages primarily, the time of knights in armor and that kind of deal. The other one was called Loo. Now, this is one I found on the internet as I was doing some research, and this was again another trick-taking card game that they would play in the parlor. It was mentioned in a couple of Jane Austen's novels. And then the last one that I had done research on was a game called Spillikins. This is an early form of pickup sticks. Now this one is, I know pickup sticks is primarily thought of as a children's game, but it really was like a game that adults helped the children. And so it became primarily a family game where everybody sort of jumped in and played this game. And ivory pieces that they used was more of an upscale type of game, but again, it was mentioned in some of Jane Austen's writings, not necessarily in a novel necessarily, but it was one of her favorites, and she very often tried to get friends of hers or gatherings to play this game. Now, again, I bring a lot of these up because these are some of the just some examples, and there's probably a lot more that we don't even know about, but it was kind of hard to find history on games. There's been games even for the working class. There was even, and the most poor, they even had games in. Oftentimes it came in the form of music, their entertainment and activities after they were done with work, but oftentimes they had stuff that we may not even know today. Now, let's get right into our interview. I'm here today with
Jenna and Donna.
I brought some friends so we could talk about party games. That's the theme for today, obviously. I'm curious of their thought on the subject. Basically, we all known some of the samples, which are, Balderdash, Pictionary, werewolves categories. I think most people know about Balderdash or Scattergory. It's a common game that are in the big stores like Target or Walmart. Jenna, what's your favorite party game that you played? Because I know we played quite a bit there in the past.
Probably Balderdash.
Balderdash is your favorite.
Pictionary.
Pictionary I kind of like, and I think one of the reasons why I like Pictionary is because it's not about drawing. And I figured that out right away when we started playing that, because I'll be good at this because I get to draw. But it's not really about drawing, is it?
No, because if you take your time and draw some awesome picture, the other people are going to have already beat you.
Right.
So
it's about speed and being able to communicate. Donna, what is a game that you really enjoyed? Like if you had your choice and you were in a party and everyone was asking you, you play games a lot, what do you want to play? You would say, let's play this. What would you pick for
if we're drinking, Cards Against Humanity.
Now, okay, I'm sorry. I have to jump in here. I've heard it's really brash, and that's not the right word.
Extremely politically incorrect.
Right. Now, I've never played this game before. I've heard lots about it. What is examples of it?
Basically everything that's bad. One of the cards you could play is AIDS or Hitler.
Really?
Or just,
so, okay, when you play a card, what happens when you play it?
Well, it's just like apples to apples.
Okay.
So
I've never played that one either.
Basically, there's a card, and it'll ask you a question along lines what's the worst thing that could happen, or something or another, and you just play a card from your hand that you think would... There's one person that judges, and you would think what would make the judge laugh is more about what Cards Against Humanity is.
Oh, okay, so you have a judge in the game.
Yeah, but it changes per round.
Okay, so every round someone is the judge, and then he picks what he thinks is the most appropriate for the question, right?
Yeah, it's usually whatever makes you laugh the most.
Okay. Have you ever played Pictionary?
Yeah.
And what do you think of that game?
I do not like it.
What don't you like about that game?
I'm always stuck in a group with people that think they're Picasso, and they have to sit there for 30 minutes shading in things.
Shading, huh? Well, Jen and I, when we were younger, we used to get together with a group of friends in California. We'd have game night, and it was a party game. It wasn't like, designer board games that we play.
Designer board games weren't even around yet.
Huh? Sorry?
The new types of...
Yeah, the new quote-unquote designer games weren't around yet, really.
Yeah.
We used to play Pictionary, Balderdash. I remember all the time, it was usually the guys against girls. How it usually was, right?
Yes.
You were usually paired up with your best friend, Tammy.
Yes.
Tammy was always reluctant to play because she I'm not a good artist, right?
No, in fact, we usually beat you guys even on sports questions just because we were so in tune.
Oh, that's right.
That we would just...
That game is really great in that way, is communication.
If you know somebody.
Yeah, if you know them really well, you'll clean up.
But if you don't know them very well, then you're at a disadvantage.
You're at a huge disadvantage, especially if you're not a good communicator. If you and that other person you're paired up with just inherently don't communicate well, I think you're kind of screwed in the game, right? One of the things about these games that I think are really great, let me back up here. One of the, I looked up several different definitions of what they call a party game, and one of the guys I thought did a pretty good job of saying it. He said, a game designed for a large group of people with very simple rules that emphasize social interaction, usually through creativity and or humor. And I think Pictionary and Balderdash definitely fit those two criteria. Now again, go ahead, what were we going to say?
Sounds like cards against
humanity.
Yeah, it sounds like
well.
the cards themselves, or the subject matter, sort of promotes that humor.
And then you have to have the right, probably, group of people.
Oh, yeah, because we played with people that got offended, and we're like, why does this even exist?
So you don't play with your local church group?
You do not play with your church group or your mom.
Yeah, my mom definitely would be offended by some of those. Because I've heard that there was some in there that was like, what if you were gay or something?
Oh, yes. It's pretty bad.
What is the other game that, Donna, you really enjoy playing as a party game?
Uno, actually.
Really? You like Uno?
It's easy. Everyone knows how to play it.
You know what? And I was just thinking that the other day. I was like, Uno, as old as it is, it's still a strong game. It's simple. We can pull it out with old and young alike, and everyone gets it.
Grandma can play it.
Yep. And it's usually one of the ones we pull out for the holidays quite often.
It's really the only one your parents really want to play.
Yeah, my mom.
Dominoes. It's not really
What's
a
that?
party game.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't care for dominoes, and I wouldn't really classify that as like a party game. I mean, even Uno's kind of pushing it because technically it's like a card game. We have in our library, we've got categories, we've got Say Anything.
Say Anything's good.
Now I know your family really likes Say Anything.
Yeah, well, when we played it with my nephews, it just depends on how creative the people are. If you have people that are creative and make it funny, then it's more fun.
Right? Have you played Say Anything before? Basically, it's like you're betting on someone's answer in a sense. It's like
Wits and Wagers.
It's a lot like Wits and Wagers in that way. And her nephew just had this knack for saying things that were kind of funny, and then everyone would just pick his because they thought it was kind of funny. And I've heard that that's one of the things about the game. That is, if you're funny, people will vote for you, and I don't think you can win that way. Did he win that game? He won that game,
I
right?
don't remember.
But yeah, that one's a really good one. Now, some of the examples that people were brought up in this category was the Resistance and Werewolf. Now, I know those are pretty serious games, but I don't think you can play that with just anybody.
No.
Like my mom wouldn't play it. There's no way, and I don't think your mom would want to play it either.
No.
Resistance.
No.
Have you played Resistance?
I have not played Resistance.
You have not played Resistance. It's really great because it's basically lying. You're supposed to lie.
Poker face.
You have to pick up, and every time she picked me. Every time, Rob's he's the one. I'm like, what?
Two people that know each other really well, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, because every time she knew with me. Every time it was very frustrating.
Tim.
Now, what do you think, as far as you guys are concerned, what are some aspects about those types of games that you like?
That they're funny.
That they have humor.
Party games are all about just having fun. It's not about
talking to people.
Yeah, it's not about strategy.
Interaction, humor. Just like this guy said here, through creativity.
Well, it's a good buffer for, like, if you run out of things to talk to, you can be like, hey, here's a game, and then you'll have a million things to talk about.
Right. You've nailed it, and I think that when it comes to like families or people we haven't seen in a while, it's really good icebreakers, social stuff. So yeah, I think you're right about that. Personally, I don't think the subject matter really has anything to do with anything, as long as the gameplay is just like what you were saying, has humor in it, social interaction, that sort of thing.
Usually the themed ones that they have, like the themed Jenga or whatever,
right.
They stink.
Yeah, so they're not as fun, right? Because it doesn't really focus on what makes a good party game, right? Mm-hmm. Have either of you played poker?
No.
I mean, technically that's not a party game, but you could argue it kind of is. People get together. Like there's that
it's not
scene.
Meant to be fun though.
Huh?
I mean, it's not meant to be like funny.
Yeah, there's no humor with poker. Although I have to say that I can't tell you how many movies I've seen with poker in it.
I imagine if you were to laugh during poker, you'd probably get your
you wouldn't win. You wouldn't win.
Or somebody might beat you up even. So.
Yeah. If you're laughing at the wrong person, that's certainly
Poker's
true.
Poker's a dark alley cigarette smoking game.
Yeah.
Sorta, yes. Because I remember in that movie, I know I'm dating myself here, but Mr. Mom, where he teaches the girls in the neighborhood to play poker, and it's a funny scene. It's not inherently humorous, but they use it in movies to be humorous, I think. Now, some people classify the King of Tokyo as a party game. Would you call King of Tokyo a party game?
Yeah.
Would you, seriously? I wouldn't.
It's fun, and it's easy like a party game, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Party game or not.
And there's reasons for that, and I think one of them is it's very involved. It's not there to invoke humor, necessarily. I know that's some people's classification. I just wouldn't. Like, I know that Werewolf and Resistance, we just talked about those, and those aren't necessarily meant for humor, necessarily. Why do you think most people out there, when they're having a party, refuse to play games like theme games like Arkham Horror?
Because Arkham Horror takes like 3 hours.
Well, true. That's true. But they'll jump into a game like Wits and Wagers or Uno.
I think it's the amount of time involved in it, like how much you want to invest in it. A party usually does not last more than 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
And you don't want to sit there for 30 minutes waiting for some guy to set up the game, then explain it to everyone.
Sure.
Mostly with party games, people already know how to play said game. They've
Sure.
learned somewhere before.
Sure. And I would agree with that too. Jenna, what do you think?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It needs to be easy, fast, fun.
The length, if you were to make a party game too long, I think you're going to kill the evening. Because people don't want to just sit and play a game the entire evening. They want to go drink or they want to eat, social, talk a little bit. If you commit the entire evening to that one game, then some people will be like, no, I don't want to come back to your house again.
Depends on the group.
Right. And
If you
that's
have
a
a
huge
gaming
one.
group, they'd probably be happy to play.
A gaming group, yeah. I can see a gaming group. But again, we're not talking about, I'm talking about the general population with an Arkham Horror-like game. Like a designer game.
Oh,
So, what do you think is the best place to find a party game?
it's Walmart.
True.
Yeah. Target, Walmart.
Target, Walmart, and that's what they call, there's another word for that they'll call like a mass market game. That they'll say, like, these games, I mean, a lot of these party games, yeah, you're right, you can find them. You could technically find them on Amazon, although you could say you could find almost anything at Amazon, too.
You could also go to the thrift store, and if there's 10 copies of it, it's obviously a party game.
It's true, too.
Yes.
It's in the mass market, so, you can say that, too. Let me see, what's the other one I was going to ask you guys about? No, what do you think is the difference between a party game and a family game? Because I think there's a fine line there, too, as well.
A party game, I think, would be more you can involve adults, not so much children.
Sure.
And that would be the difference.
Right, and I think that there's always those games that sort of overlap, right? Like Uno definitely could be considered sort of a family game, but you definitely couldn't use Cards Against Humanity as a family game,
No.
for sure.
Not unless you're a demented family.
But I also think that if you were to break out, I just lost my train of thought here, like Smartass, you couldn't necessarily play that with kids. Although it's technically Smartass is a trivia game.
I think you could play Smartass with probably young adults, maybe not little kids, because it's not how much you know in that game. So.
Although they might get turned off just to the fact that there's so many questions that are kind of tough. I mean, I even had trouble playing that game. Because, some of those questions there, we played it with your mom and she was mopping the floor with us. She was just like, bam, bam, bam. It seemed like she knew every question. That can be, I think, frustrating too. One of the things I heard once someone talking about trivia games, and I think that the trivia games, the more simple you make them, the better.
Yeah, like Trivia Pursuit, I would not bring out in a party.
No, not at all. And I heard that if you're going to make a party game for a trivial game, you go and you get cards and you find the simplest ones and then write them down, and then people get 1 point per question they get right, and whoever gets 10 points wins the game.
That's why I like Wits and Wager, because it takes Trivia Pursuit, but it has a system to where it doesn't daunt on people like that. I don't know the answer. You could guess and get it right.
Right. And you're right. I think that's where those two games, Say Anything and Wits and Wagers, I think has done so much better than Trivial Pursuit. I think Trivial Pursuit filled a niche when there was none for that type. Now, we have yet to talk about party games that deal with more like an activity. For example,
Cranium?
I'm sorry?
Cranium does, because you have to act out and do things too.
Right. Now, for a lot of people, they don't like that. Jenna's best friend Tammy could never do that. She would hate it because she would have to. It was, and I know that there's that other Lego game. It's similar.
Oh, Creationary.
Creationary. That I could see drive some people crazy.
It drives my 7-year-old crazy. She hates it.
Because you got to go fast and you got to think on the fly. What I'm talking in specifics is about charades. Now, I know charades have been around for a while, and there's oftentimes these game manufacturers will come out with some new twist on it, right? But charades have been around since like the 1800s. That's amazing to me, right? That people are still doing it.
Yeah.
They're still playing it. But again, it's still doesn't it all go back to what you're after with a party game? Social interaction, humor, right? And I think that's the real key. Do you know that one of Jane Austen's favorite games was called Spillikins?
No, did not know that.
It was a form of pickup sticks made out of ivory pieces. Anyways, a little side note
fancy.
there. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then there was another one called Lou, which was a trick-taking game with cards. Earlier in the episode, I had talked about the history behind party games, and a lot of these party games came out of games like Blindsman Bluff, which is like I said earlier in the episode, was seen in the film Sleepy Hollow. If you remember the beginning of that film, where she wore the blindfold, the main actress, I can't think of her name now.
Yes.
Anyways, and she was searching around for that person. She had to feel each person and guess who it was versus who she guessed right. She gave a kiss, but that's, I think, was something. It was it didn't. When I looked it up, they didn't say that you gave the guy a kiss or something, but that's how it was in the movie. Anyway, these types of interactions, I think, was very important in the old days because they had to break out of these social mores. I mean,
I mean, it's good for groups just to break the ice, and good for groups of people who don't really like your hobby board games.
It's for people who don't like a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people feel. I think that one of the reasons why I think some people don't like party games is because they feel I don't want to say overwhelmed, but someone like my mom might feel a little bit like it's putting her in a position.
They don't want to think too much, and they don't want to be put on the spot.
And they don't want people to think that they're dumb.
Yeah.
That's another
I think that's huge. They have to come out of their comfort zone in a way, and that's scary, right? Now, let me ask you this. You guys have both of you have been to wedding party, what do you call that? The pre-wedding party. What's that called?
Bridal shower.
Bridal shower. Gosh, I couldn't think of it. Okay, go ahead and laugh at me. And then there's baby showers and that kind of thing. Now, you guys have both been to those type of
I
parties.
hate those kind of games.
Yeah, those games are
Hate 'em.
terrible.
Okay, now tell me why they're terrible.
Okay, for baby showers, usually they do this new game where they put chocolate bars in diapers, and you have to guess what kind of chocolate bar it is. And it looks like, crap, and you're sitting there, and, you have to sit there and sniff it and poke at it, and it's disgusting, and it's not, I don't think it's fun.
I have not been to a game.
Don't. Just stop being friends with them and just leave.
That sounds horrible. That's like the worst idea I've ever heard.
I just hate all of those types of little...
They're all just guessing games, and it's...
Just guessing
Guess how
games.
many jelly beans are in the jar.
Or
And
guess how pregnant she is, or how long, or how big, or...
Well, do you think it's because these people don't really want to do it, so they're just kind of getting the first thing that they see on the internet?
I don't know. Maybe because they know nobody else wants to do it, but they feel obliged because it's tradition.
Yeah, most of them are traditional games. I know at bridal showers, they like to make the bridal dress out of toilet paper.
Yes.
And
Really? I've never heard of... Well, of course, I've never been to
For
any of
baby
these.
showers, it's like how many sheets of toilet paper or whatever to go around the belly, or
Dude,
or how many
sounds
inches.
horrible.
it's not
It's just-
pleasant.
No, it's
It's a clever ploy to get presents.
or
Or to kill time, maybe.
if you can't
right?
say baby, like everybody gets a safety pin at the beginning of when they first get there, and you can't say the word baby, and if you do, somebody takes your pin.
What? That doesn't make any sense to
And
me.
then the person with the most pins at the end
Gets a prize.
wins, gets a prize.
Weird.
The prize is usually something that
Now-
person sells.
Now, when you've been to like a Tupperware type party, do they have, or a makeup party? I know they have like makeup parties too, don't they?
They
Like a
do
Mary
have
Kay
games.
thing. What kind of games are in it there?
The last one I went to, their game was dump everything out of your purse, and there's a list, and you check off the items you have, and then she goes on. She was selling makeup, but the kind of makeup you have. Do you know what kind of chemicals it has after this game? So it's just a clever ploy to get into her little scheme.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of a marketing tool in a way.
Yes.
I see. Okay, so it's not really a game. It's just
No.
meant to get you invested in her. Gotcha. Okay, well, so we've talked about party games and about those those types of games. I mean, the only thing I see is on TV with bridal showers because I don't, I'm not
It's
invited.
nothing like that.
No, because it has to be good for great grandma.
Oh, it has to be safe.
Like,
I see.
Sis, the little sis that might be there at the bridal shower.
And now they're blending them to where men can go to these parties too. So
Really?
it
So
has to be good for them.
I would never go to one of these.
it's how it is. Sometimes they can't just let their baby daddy go. They have to be there at all times.
Wow.
Poor guy.
If only they could mix, a better party game with the type of game.
I saw
play.
one on Board Game Geek. It's called 9 Months and Counting, and it was a pregnancy game, and it actually seemed really fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was just about to say that. I mean, you would think that these game manufacturers would come up with a few of these party-like games that you could play, right? It seems like it would be a winner because everyone has to have it.
Yeah.
I mean, every family I just go through at least 2 or 3 of these things, right? Every family, I know.
I just see some people thinking it's like a one-time use thing, so they don't go out and buy it.
Maybe.
Usually it's just a tablet with maybe some word search and bingo and stuff like that, like really boring stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we talked about this because this is a topic I didn't even think about when I was writing this up, about parties that you would play. But again, it goes all back to this whole thing about where games kind of started from, because you could argue that back in the Industrial Revolution when people gained more time, because see, before that people were doing lots more labor, with their homes and their work, and so they had more time on their hands, so they started coming up with things like charades and blind man's bluff and all these kinds of games that just to us seems like it's sort of like, we've got computers and stuff now, where back then they were trying to come up with stuff to
And
do.
an abacus.
Yes. Not necessarily a game, but it's true. Okay, so anyways, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show today and giving us your thoughts.
Yeah, so game designers out there, if you want to design a game for bridal showers and baby showers, please do so. For those of us who hate those games.
Is there any games in the party genre that you would like to see? I know you talked about bridal showers and stuff like that. Are there any games you would like to see?
No,
I'm
In
not
the
creative
party.
enough to think about one, but they need to think of better ones.
Yes.
Just better.
Just, I dread going to those events just for that reason. I put no effort into any of it. Guessing jelly beans. And I
Guessing's
say
not
baby
fun.
as soon as I get there and hand somebody my pin.
Wow.
I don't like to play.
That's just crazy.
It's lame.
Okay, well, thanks again, guys. Have a great evening. And that was the interview from Donna and Jenna. Now, Ladies Night. Now, I'm not going to talk in a high voice for you all, but it's my turn to talk to Hans about party games, because, it's not just about the ladies on the party games now. I'm just going to throw out some examples. Some of those games that really exhibit that are games like Smartass and Balderdash and Pictionary, just like the girls had suggested earlier. Say Anything is another one that they talked about, and Wits and Wagers. Cards Against Humanity is definitely a humorous one if you're with the right people, however. So, what are some of the games you have played? And I'm assuming that you and your woman there, your lady, what are some of the games you guys have played in the past?
Well, she and I went to spend New Year's with some friends, and they broke out Telestrations.
Ah, that's a good one.
And that, I think it's for 4 to 12 players, so
That's
it's right in
fun.
that. It's a good number range, and it's basically a mix between telephone and Pictionary.
Right.
Each person gets a word, you draw a picture, and then you pass that you have so much time, you pass it to the person next to you. They have to guess what you drew. Then that guess goes to the next person in the circle, and they have to draw what the new guess is. And it gets back to you, and it's crazy.
You're like, where did that come from?
Yeah, and it's so fun to flip through it because you're like, the progression. It started off as fishing, then that turned into pole dancing, and that turned into
Pole dancing.
a night in jail. You
Oh,
don't know where it
night in
goes.
jail, wow.
But it was definitely a lot of fun. And she really liked it. She bought it, and she
Nice.
really, really liked it.
Well, I guess I'll have to borrow it from you because I've never played it. so.
It's definitely a great game.
And I've heard that game is great. With the more people you have, the better. I've
yeah,
heard.
because the story gets so big and so crazy.
I mean, and that game is much like, what is it called when you whisper in a person's ear and it goes down the line?
Telephone.
What's that called?
Yeah, telephone.
A telephone game?
Yeah.
Because that game right there, the more people have, the more fun that is.
most
So I
definitely.
can see how Telestrations would be better the more people you had.
Oh, yeah.
In that way. So the one that we used to get together, and we had talked about this with Jen and I and Donna, we would have a game night. It was great because you could say that this genre of board game or actually just game, really. It's not even a board game. But this genre of game is played more than any other game around the world. Party games are the most popular and more people play it. And why they're not more party games is beyond me. It just blows me away.
Good party games.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. There's a lot of bad ones out there for sure. But it just blows me away because so many people get together, and I believe that, I mean, if you look back in time, one of the things that people used to do, and we could go back to the 30s and the 20s, people would get together when people had no money, and it was back in the Depression, they would get together and have dance-offs, or they'd have barn dances, or whatever. That's what people would do, because they were poor and all this. My thought about that is these party games are another source of free entertainment, and that's why we did it back in California with our friends. We'd get together with some couples. We were poor because we had little kids, and to take kids out to a movie and dinner is really expensive, so we'd all get together and have a big mini party. Well, not a big party, but a little party, and we'd play games. We'd have a great time. Guys against the girls, and we would taunt each other, taunt our wives. It was a blast. And this is where I believe that this is where these games shine. And we played a lot of Balderdash and Pictionary. Those were our two kind of go-to. Wits and Wagers and Say Anything wasn't out quite yet.
Yeah, and the creativity and humor, I mean, I fancy myself someone who can be funny. And in college, the party game we would play a lot, which was Catchphrase. And at this point, it was like that electronic one where you start the timer, you can pick a category, and you kind of pass it around. You know, whatever the teams alternate per person, wherever the buzzer goes off, that team loses. Well, I would always, whenever it was my turn, you know, most people like real fast try to get people to guess what the word is so they can pass it off. And I would be like, it comes from bees. At times it can be sticky or sweet. And I would just go these really long, outlandish kind of descriptions.
It sounds really funny.
And people would be like, Hans, just get to the word already. I'm like, well, let's have some fun with it. And I would just go for a really long time. And there was like a beep on the thing you're passing around. So
time was up.
You knew it was a slow beep, and then it got really fast. So I knew I had the time. But everyone would get so antsy because I would take so long.
Well, people were getting nervous.
And like if it was a 2-word thing, I would describe one word and like, all right, you're halfway there. And then I would describe the other word and like, now put it together. And we just really had a lot of fun with Catchphrase.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Sit in the dorms, we'd, you know, Friday night, we didn't always have somewhere to go, so we would just sit in and play Catchphrase.
Yeah, and I've never played Catchphrase. It sounds like a really good one, and I need to. But let's switch gears slightly. Hans and I had talked about this before when we were sort of throwing around this, and one of the things that we had talked about was Werewolf and the Resistance, because those are two definite party games, and you could put them in many different categories. You can put them both in a designer board game. You can put them in filler game, because there's a new Werewolf that came out in 2013. It was a smaller version. It's more like the Resistance, from what I've heard, which is great because you get to play Werewolf now and you don't need a moderator, which is good. So, but why don't you jump in and give your thoughts on the differences between like these types of games like the Resistance or Werewolf and opposed to like some of the ones we were talking about before?
Well, I guess when we go back to that definition you read to us, you know, it's social interaction and simple rules. I guess maybe you're still having those social interactions. I've never played Werewolf, so I'm kind of drawing on my experiences with the Resistance. And those social interactions are there, but actually the last game of the Resistance I played, there was very minimal talking. I was the only person really talking, because I like to talk out the situation. I like to try to have those interactions and ferret people out by what they say and what they do.
Exactly.
Whereas a lot of people were kind of sitting back playing cool. They might say a word or two or, you know, respond to something, but it didn't seem like everyone was like up and really going for it.
Well, let me jump in on this one, because I think we can sort of pull out this game for right now and just kind of explore it a little bit about our last evening with it. Hans and brought, and one of the guys that was there, Steven, had got it for Christmas. So he was all jazzed, and he said, I had a great time with my family and all that. And so I said, well, let's play it. We've got a lot of people
Like
here.
8
People were
people, that's a
standing
great number
around.
for
They
it.
didn't want to do anything. So this is great. So we could play a lot of people. And Hans, I know you had played it a lot, and I hadn't played it in a while. So I was like, I don't want to be the moderator or the DM because I hadn't played it in a while. But I'm glad you did because you kind of helped make it happen. But I think why this one didn't succeed, and I wouldn't say it didn't succeed. I had a good time with it,
Yeah.
like I always do. But why it didn't succeed where it would normally succeed in like a family gathering or your best friend's coming over with his girlfriend or something. Why it doesn't work better in those situations than some strangers because you don't know those people. When you know people, in a way, you're going to interact more. You're going to point fingers more. It adds. When people don't know each other, they're a little more reserved and they're sitting back. If I tell a person he's a liar, that's not going to go over so well in their back of their head, I think. So that's why it doesn't work with kind of strangers, I think.
I completely agree. It's a really good point.
But I think if you're going to do it with strangers, you better make up your mind that you're going to be active. Because if you're not, see, I was trying to kind of support you there a little bit when we were doing this, and I was yelling at Dawn, pointing at her. I was pointing at Steven, and Steven was like, "What are you doing?" You know. But I was trying to get it going like you. We were trying. But I think those other two new guys that you had not met before, and then of course Ken, is a really quiet guy. I mean, these are people you don't know, folks, but some of you do know them. But the thing is that they, for whatever reason, they felt uncomfortable because they didn't know the other people, so they weren't acting. This game requires interaction. That's why this game really is a party game.
Yeah, and I think the other, we talked about that social interaction and the simple rules. You do have to take some time to describe what to do in this game. You have to, explain that a spy can vote either success or fail, and resistance can only vote this way, and you have to accept or reject the group. And if you fail, if the proposed group fails, then it moves to the next person. It is a little bit more on that in-depth side in terms of the rules versus, a catchphrase where describe the word, don't use the word, pass it along. With illustrations, draw the word, pass it along. Guess what the picture is. It has a little bit more in depth, and maybe that's why it's not considered, a full-fledged party game.
Very true. It's an outstanding game, but all parties have got to go into it understanding that they've got to participate.
I'm going to warn you, if you come to my house and we're having a party, I'm probably going to break out the resistance. So for me, it is a party game.
And you better interact, or I'm going to call on your name.
You are a spy if you don't interact with me.
Well, and you're a teacher too, so you call on people when they act all quiet in the
That's
corner.
right. Yeah, he looks suspicious.
But wait, we have questions and answers too.
That's right, Elise. Now it's time for questions and answers. Some of the ones I went online and I sort of checked out. Some people were talking about party games on BGG, and of course, as we told you before, that's one of our go-to spots. I know Hans loves that spot, and I do too. What would you classify a party game? So I'm going to throw it in your direction over there, Hans. What would you classify a party game, regardless of what this definition was over here on party game?
I guess when I saw this question, I was kind of reviewing the things people said, and there was just a couple words that really jumped out at me. I guess it's got to be engaging. The whole group has to be involved. Easy to instruct, to play, easy to play it, and easy to win it. If it gets too hard to win it or be the winner of something, people are going to be put off by it. In catchphrase, I just have to be able to describe a word. In apples to apples, I just have to be witty enough to make someone pick my card. Whereas resistance, I might have to tell enough lies, or some of those other games, I might have to have a really good strategy. I think easy to win and fast-paced is another one.
Fast-paced is a huge one.
I think games that are great, but they have some downtime. Arkham Horror is absolutely my number one game. I love it, but when it's not your investigator's turn, if you're not invested in the theme and the story and what's going on, you're going to be bored.
Right, if you're not interacting.
The game has to be fast-paced, where there's always something to watch, 30 seconds, 40 seconds of interaction, and then you're off to this next interaction.
I've seen it when people aren't interacting. If they have too much downtime, if it's not quick, people are over there in the corner going, okay, I'm kind of bored over here. Mm-hmm. Now, another question someone had brought up, and I know we had talked about this in the past, is King of Tokyo. And this one, there was a heated debate on, is King of Tokyo really a party game? I mean, personally, I don't see it. don't get me wrong, I love King of Tokyo. I have a great time with it, but I just don't see it as a party game. I mean, it really only can support, what is it, 7 or 8 people at the most?
Yeah.
Was it 7?
Six is the most it can do.
So, I mean, it's only 6, and you're rolling dice. There's a little too much involved, and it's a little slow at times that I would really consider. I mean, it's funny and fun, but I just wouldn't consider it.
I think the slow is where it happens. When you have 6 people, there is a little bit of time where your character does not get affected whether somebody goes into Tokyo or not.
Yep.
It does, I would say, a 4-person party game. But that sounds silly because how many parties just have 4 people?
That's right.
Right. It could be, a party, maybe you got 15 people and so many play Resistance and so many play King of Tokyo or this or that. But then you're coming into just a board game night and people can do that anyway. After a few more plays now, I would definitely say that I probably wouldn't break it out in a large party to try to get people at least more than 6 people, 5 to 6 people. That's where it starts to really suffer.
The other one that we had kind of talked about when I interviewed the girls was, should you have a strong theme in a party game? I mean, this is something that many games attempt. They attempt to put a strong theme in there. Like, I know that there was, my family had bought, because my mom and dad both love history, so my brother went out and bought a party game that had a strong history feel to it, and it didn't work. I'm not even quite sure why. I'm not even sure. I guess I haven't analyzed that situation quite enough. But I think the ones that have a very generic or very light theme, because at the end of the day, it's not what a party game is all about.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth on this just because I'm a person who loves theme. So my initial answer is yes, it's going to draw people in. It's a theme, But then I thought about it a little bit more, and I think the answer is no. And I think because mostly when you have a party, people are just wanting an extension to the fun. They're not looking for a new experience. The experience is the party.
The experience is the interaction.
Yeah, you just want to have another extension, another addition. Well, first we had this great dinner, and now we're going to play this fun game, but it's still with the people I'm at, not with this adventure I'm going on, not with this, this theme of mystery or fantasy. I am interacting with my friends at this party, and it's all about the person-to-person experience itself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. One of the questions I posed to the girls earlier is that where do you find a party game? Well, they're everywhere. And that's one of the reasons why party games are the most played games in the world. There's just so many of them because they're everywhere. And why? Because Target, Walmart, they know that you're going to go out and buy these games because everyone's going to have a party. Everyone's going to have get-togethers with family. So, yeah, you're going to find them everywhere.
Yeah, I get scared still recommending someone to go to Target to get a game just because there's going to be so many other party games and games that are with pasted on things like, the trivia of Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
Or the Redneck Life. I mean, I'm just worried.
It's horrible.
I'm worried to recommend Target. Slowly, they're starting to get some better games, in there. Ticket to Ride, Star Trek Catan, regular Catan.
That's awesome stuff.
They're getting there.
Just like X-Wing, I just was in the other day, and I saw X-Wing miniatures, and I was like, are you kidding me? That's a great game, and it's in Target.
So I mean, I'm leaning towards Target. Target, if you're listening, you're getting closer. Good job. Keep the good work up.
You're doing your good work, right?
But I guess for me, I'd say Barnes & Noble. There's a lot of them around, and you know what? I bought Mansions of Madness from Barnes & Noble. I didn't even know when I walked in that they were going to have that option. It blew my mind away.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because the last time we went there, and we went there because my wife, the books are all the time. Now that we've got some more bills and things are a little tighter, we don't go so often. But we used to go and, go see books. Well, we went in last time. There was tons. And, well, this, of course, around Christmas time. So they're always good. Games are good sellers, I think, around Christmas time. I was amazed at what they had. Dominion? Are you kidding me? And they had Dungeons and Dragons Dragons, well, they always have Dungeons and Dragons role-playing stuff way in the back there with the fantasy stuff. But in the main game area, they had Wrath of Ashladon. I was like, are you kidding me? These games that are amazing board games, and they're there? Are you kidding me?
And they had the Catan and all the expansions. They usually have some of those smaller games like Bang and Forbidden Island. So to me, Barnes & Noble, if you're looking for a mainstream store, and they separate pretty well. They have kind of like puzzles, and they have a little bit more party game, and they kind of have like these licensed games, like the Clues and the Monopolies and stuff like that are licensed, and then they have the deeper hobby board games, which is fantastic.
Right, and I would completely agree and applaud Barnes & Noble for having these games. It's just I'm just blown away. Of course, I would suggest that you would go to your local game store first. But if game stores are kind of hard to find in some places in America.
Yeah, you can't just punch them into your map quest like hobby board gaming and they pop up. It's really hard. So for those casual gamers or people you just want them to start looking at, because sometimes it's just starting to look at the boxes. You start looking at those boxes and you kind of get intrigued by what you see. And Barnes & Noble, thank you. You're doing great.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Well, and that brings us to our end of our question and answers and at the end of our episode. And we are really glad you joined us. Stay tuned, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Ladies Night!
Ladies Night, bye!
Thank you for joining the Huff-In-Stuff podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening and hope you can tune in next time. Huff-In-Stuff is brought to you by Southwestern Valley Gaming Group at swvalleygamingsgroup.webs.com. You can visit us on our webpage at huffnstuffpodcast.webs.com. That is HUFFNSTUFF podcast.webs.com. We love to hear from you, so leave us questions, feedback, or just say hi. As always, keep on smiling and game on.